see white lies dancing between the lines. She's an atheist. Carousels in her mind, spinning all in her eyes. She's an atheist.
Hello and welcome to the Let's Chat podcast, or the Digital Freethought Radio Hour podcast, or Mind Pirates extravaganza for blasphemy and piratism. You have turned into the right. You have turned into the right place for the right show. This is 103.9 FM WOZO Radio, all day, all long, low power, just for you. A special show about science, scientism, the philosophies of nature, religion, Pastafarianism, fallacies, sunk cost fallacies. We're going to be talking about all of those in this show today. And we have a great cast of people to talk about them. We have our own Boudreaux, all the way from Kentucky. How you been?
I've been well.
Fantastic.
How are you guys?
Fantastic. So good. And we're going to get into it. And we, of course, have our own Dread Pirate Higgs. Cool. And I'm Let's Chat. Your Tyrone Wells. Feel free to contact me at my channel. We'll plug them at the end of the show. But before we get into the meat and potatoes today, and we're going to do a full roundup, I want to say welcome back, Dread Pirate Higgs. And would you please welcome us through a noodly invocation?
Absolutely. God be me captain, I shall not want. He maketh me to float in salt water. He steereth me through glassy seas. He filleth me bowl. He steereth me through the straits of noodliness, for goodness sake. Aye, though I sail through the heaving of tempestuous waters, I will fear not sinking, for thou art with me. Thy mast and thy rudder, they comfort me. Thou preparest a feast before me in the presence of me mates. Thou quenchest my thirst with grog. My goblet runneth over. Truly, pasta and grog shall abide with me all the days of me life, and I shall dwell in the galley of the quab forever.
Oh, man.
Speaking of like spending some time in the Valley of the Quab, Dread Pirate, you've been deep in a weird environment, but finally back safe and sound. Happy to see it. Where have you been and how you been?
Well, yeah, so I was up in Fort St. John, and then we got burned out of there. So they shut the
Literally
camp down.
burned out. Literally burned out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was smoky. We were kind of on the border between the evacuation alert zone and the evacuation order zone. So they just decided to shut the camp down, kick us out. So, yeah, so I took the opportunity to, scoot on down home. I made it here on Wednesday. And then yesterday got the call to go up again because they need medics to provide service for the firefighters on the front lines there. So I'm going to be their guy.
Dread, I have no idea how to follow that up with a topic more manly than that. Like I feel emasculated. Or you want to talk about working out and football? Yeah, how's your progressive overload coming? That's
I got my
getting a Jeep Wrangler.
I started driving up. I started driving up right after the show here.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll stop in. I'll drive for 8 hours today, and then I'll do the remaining 6-hour drive to Fort St. John tomorrow. So.
Very cool, and we appreciate the work. We've been seeing smoke even in the U.S. Like, if anyone wonders what's going on there, Dread Pirate's making sure it doesn't get too bad. That's atheism.
Well, it was
Pastafarians in action.
Yeah,
that's right. When I left Fort St. John, you couldn't see 100 feet in front of you, and it took me driving south for 4 hours before I was out of the smoke.
Wow,
4 hours driving.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow, think about that. That's crazy. Yeah, crazy.
Half 500,000 hectares in this one fire. It's the largest fire ever in BC's history. 500,000 hectares. You could fit 2.5 cities the size of London, England, inside this area.
Wow. And the crazy thing is, I work in a site that deals with nothing but filtration. And when we hear like driving with smoke, alarm bells go off in our head of just like particle size.
Yeah.
What kind of suit? What can we do to like help them out? We've had issues before where we had consumers buy up all face masks during our COVID crisis, and hospitals and hospices and teachers couldn't get access to them. And so what we said was, we have assembly lines here. We have means of making not only face masks, but make them better. let's just produce them. So that way, we can help our community, but also it was either make stuff for free for everybody or wait at home as scared as everybody else and not being able to do work. So what we said is, hey, we can do critical work. Let us go to jobs. Let's keep these machines running, and we can make stuff for the tri-state area. And that's what we did.
Nice.
We quickly, and there's no other site like ours that's capable of completely switching all of our processing lines to doing stuff like that. We have a very flexible architecture, but
so you don't have to do a lot of retooling.
No, we don't. We're very broad with what we can do. We're very high level and nothing specialized. And so we can move and modular everything out. But when we have that fire crisis, we're wondering, is this something that we can get onto? Is it something we can get onto? There's other sites in, I don't know if I can say, but in Washington area that is probably better suited for distribution. But we're still making face masks. It's kind of a crazy thing, but we're trying to do whatever we can to help. What's interesting, the main point is, Dredd as a fire guy, and emergency responder, and even in my capacity as a science engineer, where all of our jobs are dedicated towards even civil engineering, because you need roads to move all this stuff around, right? And that's what WOZO represents. All of our jobs are meant to counteract whatever God's plan is. When God says, I have a plan, it's up to us to be we got to stop this. We got to
thwart him.
We will thwart this plan for the interests of mankind. That's I'm ready to get this clipped out. That's the true purpose of science, is just thwarting God's plan at any cost. WOZO, speaking of traveling, how you been, my world travel buddy?
I've been well. I talked about Mexico last time. It was a blast, but I'm back and trying to get back into the swing of things. It's been an adjustment, but yeah.
It's been an adjustment, in terms of being able to flush a toilet, or
being able to put toilet paper in a toilet and drink the water.
What is this? Is this water?
Yeah.
Oh, I can just drink it.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. I don't know.
Brush my teeth with it. It's just
Let's go.
But Dredd, I gotta ask you, and maybe Ty would know, but
sure.
Are you gonna change out your air filter in your car?
Oh, I do mine regularly. I have a scheduled PM for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Driving smoke.
Yeah, I have mine on a scheduled thing too.
Okay.
But I should think about it because that's a good idea. We should probably get that done.
And thankfully, the smoke isn't so bad here in Tennessee. Typically, what warrants it is when Kentucky throws all of their bluegrass pollen down to our state,
right?
And it just becomes unbearable to breathe. So I wait until the beginning of winter as part of my 6-month rotation to swap it out. That way I don't replace it mid-spring, because a filter needs to have sort of a dust cake on top of it to be really effective. And if you swap it out when it gets really bad, it's going to be a while stuff is just flaring through it before it actually builds up to its efficiency. It's really bad. Your bluegrass is bad. We've put them onto an SEM, a microscope, to look at them and say, what does this pollen look like? And let me tell you something. Pollen from a pine tree is like a beach ball. It's beautiful. It's colorful. It's got little segments on them, but it's nice and smooth. You get pollen from other kinds of grass, and it's okay, it's more rod-like, but it's not. It's okay. Bluegrass is a spiky, angry pineapple that just sticks to everything. And it's wow, that's what's getting in my eye. That's why my eye is so irritated. That's what's getting on my shirt. So if I touch it and then brush my shirt and then accidentally do this, that gets in my eyeball too. Bluegrass pollen is very evil. Come on. I'm blaming Eric for that one.
I'm going with God's wrath, right?
Just blame God. It's if you can take credit, if you can give God credit, you can give God blame as well too, right?
That's right.
So we are going to catch up on an interesting topic that I had, science versus scientists. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's always an interesting thing to talk to religious people. I've had more conversations face to face with people. I'm just not recording them, but I have some friends who I've helped and they've done the bulk of the work. But I've had some friends who I talk to on a regular basis who recently come out as atheists, despite being religious before I met them. And all I'm giving them is a good space to give questions to me or feedback on. And one of the things I now that we're more comfortable talking about atheism, what does it mean, and they have no shame with it, is I go back to some of their excuses before when we had our conversations, and they'll say, I was more willing to just say science is proof of God. because when I look at science, it seems to do nothing but support a grand plan. And when I ask in more clarity in those conversations, what did you mean when you said that? They say, you know what? Now that I think about it more, I don't mean the science was proving it. I meant scientists were saying that it was a connection. And I thought, what a great epiphany for them to reach on their own merit, because there's a big difference between saying, well, science says this versus, well, this scientist said this. Because you can have Christian scientists. And I want to know, have you guys ran into situations where people have made those claims? Have you made those claims in the past? And what do you think is the nuanced difference between the two? Dredd, I'll throw this up to you. Is there a difference between a scientist saying something versus science saying something?
Of course, right? Because science is a methodology for discovery, right? Whereas science is, you take James Watson for example, Watson and Crick fame, who, was
discovered the DNA molecule.
DNA.
Yep.
And, one day walking in some trail, he came upon a frozen waterfall, fell to his knees and accepted the Lord.
Right.
That is not critical thinking. That's not thinking like a scientist.
Right.
That's just somewhere else, right? So,
I mean,
so being a scientist doesn't give you 100% protection against crazy ideas.
Right. And I'd say dial it back a couple thousand years, you would have scientists who first discovered how to make telescopes, right? And they would look at the stars and they'd be like, wow, look at this giant carpet with pinpricks in it.
Right.
And the pinpricks behind it are heaven. And I'm just using everything I'm aware of and the biases of my culture to try to interpret the world around me, right? And I have such a heavily bias towards this omnipotent power, this like all-powerful being, that everything I'm seeing is contextualized with that without me being aware of my own bias. And so when Watson Crick, when he sees that waterfall, he's like, oh God. But like if he was in Egypt, he'd be like, oh, Ra. If he was literally anywhere else, it'd just be a different thing, right? Which is really important. Why we have to make sure we don't necessarily drive. I would say this: we need to drive culture away from being indoctrinated into religion, because we start out without that bias, but are given it to us during our upbringing. So it's important to realize that we have all the faculties of having like this unbiased view of the world, if we were just to hold on to it and train it and develop it, rather than being indoctrinated with like the starter pack of how the world works that isn't sound to begin with. Boudreaux,
well, and religion and science are at odds. I mean, they're not just non-overlapping magisteria. They are the antithesis of one to the other, by virtue of the fact that in religion, you already have the answer.
Right.
Whereas in science, you're trying to discover it, right? And so if you already start with the answer,
right,
as in religion, then that is how you will formulate your methodology for discovery, because you've already got the answer. So I think those things are just fundamentally at odds with one another. I don't know, like, call yourself a Christian scientist. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Boudreaux, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I'm going to put you on the hot seat a bit.
Sure.
Religion and science, there's two different methods to figuring out stuff. The religious method, as told by other religious people, it's simpler because one, you already have the answer, and the answer is God. Why isn't that the better method? If you follow Occam's razor, you have the simplest answer.
Right. I mean, yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to pull up Occam's razor, which I think it's a kind of a stretch to use it in this case. But I agree with Dread Pirate that you're really talking about already having the answer and backing it up with interpretation of text,
right?
Turning to a page and just saying, well, I already know the answer, so when this was written, this is what it means.
Right.
Whereas, science and the scientists that do it, I mean, are constantly improving and it's in some cases disproving what someone else had thought. Right. The pinpricks in a blanket. Understanding what is the center of the universe and all that. I mean, the kind of the science goalpost keeps moving, but it's moving in the right direction. Right.
Right.
And it's based
Progress.
on,
Right.
progress. And it's based on evidence, and it's based on our understanding, the tools we have. Whereas the other side has, this kind of ironclad protection called faith, where you can't doubt it. In fact, doubting it gets you in trouble, right?
Right.
So it's not a very good standard, as you said before the show, to use to get to truth. It's, I mean,
Good point.
Yeah.
Dred, I want to throw it out at you.
I was just going to say, just quickly, that it seems curious that that people would even try to justify religion through science, because you remember Hebrews 11:1.
Right.
It says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." So the whole premise of faith is the exact opposite of what the discovery is through science is. So why even bother?
I can't explain that. I can't explain that. But I want to just make one point clear before I leave this YouTube comment bait still in the water. And that is that there's sort of a misinformation campaign that religion has against science. And it goes with even the principles that science uses to determine good arguments and bad arguments are summarized and flanderized to the point where they're just absurd when they're put into religious hands and then used to explain to the general public how science argumentation works. And one of them is Occam's razor, which is not a creed for the simplest answer is the best answer. And this goes without saying that God is a simple answer. In fact, he's the most complex thing you can bring up in a conversation.
Right.
But Occam's razor has never been the simplest answer is the most correct. It's the one that makes the least assumptions is the correct answer. And what you have with religion is a multitude of assumptions of, well, it's my God, it's this text, it's this being, it's this powerful, it's this was the miracle, and it doesn't matter if you can't test it, it is what it is, and I'm right, and everyone else who says otherwise is wrong, and we don't have to test it, we're just assuming all of that is true. Versus science is just like, I'm not making assumptions, I'm just only making the claim up to the amount the empirical evidence can support. And between those two methods, you have a system that makes very little assumptions, if any at all. If anything, it's a hypothesis that we can test, and we're testing the hypothesis itself, versus our entire castle, entire house of cards built where every card is an assumption from the very foundation to the very top. That's one of the things I hate about Occam's razor. And then you ask Dred Pirate, why is it that religion cares about proving things with science? Is because religion chases trends, and we know this. It borrows other people's holidays. It changes that power dynamics. It will always go towards the path towards most popularity because that gets them more people in the pews or more people joining your congregation. And what's been cool back in the Mesopotamia area, not science. No one cared about science back then. People were, eating poop off the ground and like giving babies without washing their hands. They're just like, I don't believe in germs. I don't believe in this. And then science came along. It's like, oh, medicine, shelter. Oh, okay. There's cool things that come with this that increases our quality of life. That's so good that we can't ignore it. And now we have this thing where now religion needs to be supported by science because they're one and the same thing, right? Like God must want us to have electricity and telescopes and warm houses and MP3 players and all this stuff. And we have to now broadcast our message on websites because God needs a TikTok account, Instagram followers and stuff.
It is. You're absolutely right, Ty, that religion will so often take credit for social advances that were accomplished through secularism,
right?
You know what I mean? And just unabashedly just take credit for it, accepting homosexuals or ending slavery or whatever. And they say, well, it's because we're a Christian nation and we're all about love, and no,
right. So there was I remember when I was in Knoxville and the Atheist Society showed up at I think it was a gay pride parade, and we were just like supporting and helping everybody there. And there was in front of us a Christian organization that was also supporting the gay pride parade. And they had posters of just like, just be kind and love everybody. And in the sides, there was another Christian organization holding up signs saying, all of you guys are going to hell. All of you guys are going to hell. And they had citations. And in my head, I was like, these guys are a better representation of the faith that they are followers of, but the people in front of us are a better representation of people, right? And while you can have that faith and be a good person, why have the faith in the first place? Because the people on the sidelines are the best representation of that. And if anything, they just need to like get over that hang up. But if there was ever a question, these guys have citations, you guys don't. There's no phrase in the Bible that says just be kind and love everybody. Like that's going to be a hard thing to find. I would dare people to find that. But I can say you can find the phrases where you guys are going to hell if you sleep with another man. These people are my chosen people. You guys aren't. Like that. That's well cited. Anyway.
It's cherry picking. It's like using the New Testament instead of the Old Testament.
Yeah, exactly. It's even worse than that, right? Because religious people are good by virtue of the reward they get or the punishment.
Right.
Whereas people otherwise, secularists and humanists are good for its own sake, right? Like I think the latter is a more virtuous quality than the former by that.
I do want to bring up what I think is the tragic situation behind this, because it's always fun talking to other atheists about like, isn't this silly? It is silly. It is silly. It is silly. But there's a sad component too, in that we've lost every single person that's a scientist that becomes a Christian scientist, right? Or someone that's truly interested in STEM, but isn't able to fully utilize their critical thinking capabilities because they've just been so inundated with this bad dogmatic thinking style, or holding on to these terrible methodologies that give them this cognitive bias that interferes with their ability to come up with true conclusions, because they're holding on to the conclusions that are comfortable, or the ones that they want to have, or they're so popular that they can espouse, unfortunately, misinformation to people because they want this thing to be true. I find that to be tragic, because we lose an opportunity to have, in my mind, more luminaries in this world. And as a result, we just lose the capacity of what they could share with the world. I can make an analogy behind this. There's a lady named Helen Keller. If you don't remember her, she's a lady who had meningitis when she was like 19 months old, became deaf and blind. And everybody wrote her off and said, you know what? She's already a woman in the early 1900s. Like, who cares what she's going to do? But she worked really hard. She learned how to read. She learned how to write. She learned how to speak. And her books are so eloquently made. And she wrote plays. Like she had dictates on political matters. Like she wrote on like very heavy subjects in a very well-mannered tone. And her biggest regret that she says in a lot of her speeches, I just wish I could speak well. Like, it's not even, I wish I could write better, I could see more books, or I could hear. She's just, I wish more people had the capability of hearing what I had to say in a manner that they could appreciate it, because I understand that there's a detriment between how I communicate and how other people can appreciate that. And I thought, how tragic is that to extend that to scientists who could have a lot to say, but have this religious rhetoric as their communication standard and can't espouse true science because they are inhibited by Jesus walking on water and they're a physicist. It's just like, you can't have those two in the same ballpark. What's up?
Yeah.
What do you think, Dredd?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's having a filter that everything goes through that does not conform with reality, right? It's wishful thinking.
I think wishful thinking, yes.
I think Dawkins even referred to it as kind of like a form of schizophrenia, where, Monday through Friday, they go in, they are critical thinking, they are doing, the good science. And then, Sunday, it's almost like the show Severance, something in their brain switches. And now all of a sudden they suspend.
And the shame is, Dredd and Eric, you both can do this. Like, you can watch Star Trek and enjoy Star Trek, right? You can watch a Star Wars movie and enjoy a Star Wars movie. Like, we can suspend our disbelief.
It's suspension of disbelief, yeah.
And appreciate.
But at least I know I'm doing it. At least I know I'm doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Data is a real guy or Captain Picard is a real guy. We're gonna transport down. I get it.
And that's the scary thing. It's still scary and it's both tragic, because you can train a person in such a way that they don't realize how to turn on or off their disbelief, right? You can train them to always basically have it sort of in this halfway state where it's kind of half on and off and flickering. And you just think, man, I wish I could help you out and just like flick that thing off and show you, you have control of this. You don't lose anything in your religion by realizing that it's fiction, right? You can still appreciate it. I still love Christian music. I still think there's something to be said about public speaking that we can learn from pastors. I still think that there's really good morals that we could learn from how people back in the day thought they should treat each other. But I don't consider it real gospel from a God given to us. Like, in fact, I find that to be more empowering because it means we can take that as a template and improve upon it. And we can use the scientific method to improve about a lot of these rules that we came up with, how to treat each other. We can make that better. In fact, we already do now. But until we recognize that, we're stuck at a certain pace. And I want to be able to accelerate how we treat each other rather than stay in the stay at pace. Like, let's get rid of the fat and get back to being better people.
Exactly. And that's, for me, it's the appeal of pastafarianism is the 8 I'd rather you didn't. You know, it's not dogmatic.
Right.
It's guidelines. And, you know, if you can't do them all the time, well, do them as best you can when you can, right?
Yeah, I really did like that list. That was a really, really good list. I've always liked structuring morals as don't force yourself to be good. Just don't be bad. Like, don't purposely slow us down, but you don't have to push us forward, right? Like, because if you have to morally push me forward, then you're just being obedient when you're being good, right? Rather, and I don't want obedience. I want people who can.
It generally leads to hypocrisy as well, right?
Yep.
Because then you, when you do things that are contrary to the commandments,
yes,
then you're a sinner now, right?
Want to make a quick mention before we.
Is it what's the timer on? Do you have to do a half show?
Yeah. We're gonna do a half show right now, but I just want to wish both you and Boudreaux happy Father's Day. I hope you guys enjoy it. Enjoy your time off. Tomorrow we also got Juneteenth. Enjoy that holiday as well. A well-deserved. I don't know if you got Juneteenth in Canada. Juneteenth. Maybe not. Yeah. It's the Emancipation of Slaves Day for US. Yeah. That was finally made a federal holiday. We'll take a break. Coming right back after the show, we're going to be talking about sunk costs and sunk ships on the Digital Freethought Radio Hour, 103.9 FM, all day, all long, low power. Do it. Welcome back to the show. This is the Digital Freethought Radio Hour, 103.9 FM. You're listening to this in Knoxville, and we are here to talk about science, religion, superstitions, pastafarianism, truths and facts and fallacies. And we're going to be jumping into a topic called sunk cost fallacy. Now, Boudreaux, love to hear what you think about this. Have you ever heard of the sunk cost fallacy before?
I've heard of sunk cost.
Okay.
In economics. But no, I'm not familiar with this. At least I don't remember I'm familiar with this.
Have you heard about?
They also call it the Concord fallacy.
Ooh, okay. I'm interested in this story. Talk to me.
You remember the big plane, the Concorde?
Okay.
So they put a lot of money into it. They kept putting money into it over years and years and years, and it still didn't succeed. And when that big crash happened, they finally put an end to it. But that was a sunk cost where they just kept throwing good money after bad money.
Right.
To no good end. And so that's why the sunk cost fallacy is that shared name, the Concord fallacy.
I have a real world example I'll share as well. And thank you for that, because mine's also economic, Boudreaux and Eric. So I like a game called Dance Dance Revolution. Have you ever heard of that game before?
Yeah.
Dread, have you ever seen Dance Dance Revolution before? Boudreaux, you want to describe it?
Yeah, well, and I never owned it, but don't you have a pad on the ground
Sure
that
do.
acts as a controller, right?
Yes.
You step on it, and you have to hit the buttons, so it's exercise, but it's a game.
It's like exercise, and they'll have music and they'll have arrows, and you're supposed to time your button presses with your feet on the pad with what's on the screen. So it's almost like you're dancing. And the game gets progressively more complicated as you get better at it. to the point where if you're in high school, that's like the coolest thing. Like the only way you can score cool points is being like, I beat this game on this difficulty. And people will be like, this guy is a cool guy. And so that was my high school experience. And so I am unpacking stuff from underneath my bed. I open up a suitcase and nothing but old games and old consoles are in the suitcase. And I'm thinking, wow, fantastic. I even have an old dance pad and a Dance Dance Revolution disc. And I put it into this old console I have called a PS3. And it says it can't read the game because it needs a PS2 to play. And I have a PS3 and it's not backwards compatible. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let me just see if I can download the game on PC. And it should be for free, right? So I download Stepmania, which is the free version of Dance Dance Revolution now. But my dance pad is for a PlayStation. It's not for a PC. So I said, okay, let me just buy a converter. So I buy a converter. That converter didn't work. And I waited like 2 days for it to come in, and I'm still excited to play the game. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll just try a different converter. I buy a different converter. That one doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, I'm now like $20 in. What do I need? It's like, I need to buy a dance pad that's USB compatible so I can connect it to my PC. So I buy one. Turns out it's the wrong kind of pad because my pad has foam in it and it has a USB or it has a PS2 dongle. And I'm like, I still don't have a PS2. I bought the wrong thing. Okay, what do I need to buy now? I need to buy a USB pad for my PC. So I bought another pad. I'm now like $140 into this whim of playing a game I didn't even want to play in the first place that much. And now I'm kind of upset because I had to buy the pad without the foam. So in order for me to get the same kind of rugged quality, I have to go buy foam. So now I'm like in Durham's, which is like this sports fitness place that sells yoga mat foam. And I'm thinking like, oh, this is like $40 for just foam. I'm just like, but I need it for the dance pad. And I already bought 2 adapters and I already got it on my USB stick. Wow. And so I'm just like, ugh. Okay, all right, maybe I should just buy a PlayStation 2 because at this point I've already spent enough money that I'm just like, let me just get the PlayStation. So I go online and they don't sell PlayStation 2s for cheap. You have to buy basically full prices if it was like 2008. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't even like the music that much anyway. I'd rather just learn how to actually dance using YouTube. I'm kind of done. And I can't return any of these things. I have 3 dance pads in my home now. I have 3 dance pads and I can't use any of them. I have two PS2 to USB adapters that I have nothing to use for. And Amazon's not taking them back. They're like, we haven't sold these things in the last 20 years, sir. Just like, fair enough. I guess I'll just donate them or give them to one of my coworkers who has a working PlayStation 2. But that's sunk cost.
Can I contribute to your
Absolutely.
I might have you go down another rabbit. My brother formed a company that makes adapters for old gaming systems.
Don't you
converts them to USB. No, I'm serious. In fact, I have one here. Seriously, my brother, at least it's worth me asking him the question of what's the most reliable way of doing this. And my brother might tell me, this or that, but seriously, he is in the game. People know him for it. He makes the Bliss box and the 4Play, and they both convert basically every Atari all the way down to the Coleco. I don't know how newer systems he's gone, but
something you need to know about Eric is he's an enabler. And if you haven't seen behind his office, he's just like, oh, you just got off of heroin? Oh, I have a cousin who's like just doing a discount on heroin. It's amazing. I should get you in touch with them. He's like, no, I got off. He's like, no, let me just. No, I think I can help you out here. I can help you out here. First one's free.
He'll get you hooked up. Yeah.
So why do I bring up sunk cost fallacy? Because I think there's a really big connection between it and religion, or at least how people can buy into, well, I've already done this my entire life. Why give this up now, right? Well, what harm would it be if I just like, instead of like staying in this pool, just go down a little bit deeper because it's just 1 more inch, right? And so one of my friends who I talked to, who's 44 years old now, has been a Christian since he was 42, or like for 42 years, and only in the last 2 years since I've known him has been willing to like step away from that, him and his wife. One of the biggest things he has a hard time doing is recognizing the labels that he has to give up are like some of the hardest things for him to do, because he knows he's not a Christian, but he doesn't want to call himself not a Christian or irreligious or definitely the A word, even though he knows there's nothing inherently wrong with them. and he recognizes on an intellectual level that I am these things. I am an agnostic atheist, but it feels terrible because his entire life he was thinking these are worse than the devil, right? And the cost for him to give up the comfortable labels that he has that he doesn't feel like he even has a place in is too great for him. And so he just thinks, what would be the harm if I just maintain, if like I'm not an atheist, I'm not religious, but I am an atheist, but I'm going to still keep calling myself a Christian in this sense because I've already came all this way. Like it's hard for me to pull a sunk cost tie to this without taking up like an extra 10 minutes, but like the entire idea is you can't just step away from it because you've bought into the system so greatly your entire life that it's really difficult to walk away from. And even when you realize that the thing that you bought is snake oil, you're just like, well, I'm already here. It's already warm.
You could actually just shift that a little bit. I smoked for 34 years. Now, if I were in the sunk cost fallacy thing,
right?
Well, I've been smoking all this time. Why give it up now?
Right.
Like I'm one of those, I'm the kind of person, if I'm sitting in a movie theater and the movie sucks, I leave.
Whoa.
If I'm reading a book and I don't get into the book, I put the book down and I never go back to it, right? I mean,
good for you.
Those are those mental trainings that people have to get themselves used to, right? Because it trains you to give up on things that you don't want to invest in anymore, right?
Right. I wish more people would do that. Bujo, are you also a quitter? Like, are you
quitter?
Yeah. Are you good at quitting?
Yeah. No, I've thought about that with TV shows. Like, I mean, there's so much streaming content out there that you can't watch it all.
Right.
You shouldn't watch.
Absolutely.
So I've been very stingy with kind of my rules. I'll start a show and I'll just be like, no, not feeling it. I'm not.
There's a preying sort of capitalistic nature that sort of takes advantage of the sunk cost fallacy to keep people hooked in. And it's one of the reasons why I checked out of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I'm done with it now. Since Endgame, like, I'm like, that was like my ticket to leave. And they're like, stay tuned for Ant-Man 2. It's like, no. You did all the things. There's no more bad guys out in this world. I don't care about them anymore. Like, you took the biggest one down. I'm sure you guys have it handled from here on out. It's like, well, we have Shang-Chi and we have the next Spider-Man movie and we have this, like, dude, no, like, don't you realize that you ended it? It's called Endgame. So like when that happened, I spent 17 years hooked on this soap opera of superheroes since Iron Man all the way to Endgame. And I'm like, I'm done now. And I can't be bought back in. However, every single time a new Marvel movie comes up, there's the zeitgeist of YouTube thumbnails and commercials coming about and people saying, you got to watch this, you got to check it out. And I could see maybe this is pretty close to how it is when someone steps out of religion. And maybe it's like, oh, what are my friends doing on Sunday? They're busy. I can't play with them. Or it's like, okay, so I'd have to get new friends. Or I drive down the road and I see the billboards on the churches and they're all saying, Jesus loves you still. Jesus wants to save you. Or when Easter comes by and it's like, oh, this is a holiday. Can I celebrate this holiday? What's going on? Or Christmas comes. Which songs am I supposed to sing? Like, everything is reminding me of religion when I have that religious mindset or context, that it's like the hooks that keep pulling me back in, because I'd have to completely readopt an entirely new worldview if I was religious and I had to leave it. And that takes a lot of effort. So it hasn't harmed me, as Budret says, as far as I can see, it hasn't harmed me at all. Why don't I just keep sticking with it? Especially if all these hooks and enablers are nearby me. The culture that I'm in can really dictate how hard it is to leave religion. And I feel like sunk cost is like a very apparent swamp to get stuck in when it comes to like dogmatic thinking, right? So it's not just a matter of just realizing you're wrong. It's like, it's beyond that. It's just, you live in a culture that's maintaining a momentum, right? And it takes a lot of effort to fight against it.
So it's really,
and like you say, I mean, it isn't just sunk cost, but it certainly factors huge in that whole scheme of things, right?
Right.
Because like you say, it's your friends all of a sudden aren't around because they're doing their religious stuff. So there's a lot of kind of cultural factors that are, working together there to make it difficult for a lot of people to leave their religions. I mean, you think about the clergy project,
Mhm.
where pastors and priests are so ensconced in their milieu that it's virtually impossible to leave, and without the assistance of like-minded individuals, they would probably never do it. They would just continue down that road by virtue of the fact that that's all they've ever known.
Right.
I mean, that's their career, right? I mean,
That's
they've
their career,
studied
exactly.
it. Yeah, I've heard.
That's how they bought their house, and
Yeah.
put their kids through Christian school and all that.
What about a
sure.
spouse though too?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
for sure.
you want to leave, but then you think about, well, I'm going to get divorced, or I'm going to leave, or how do you? I've heard a lot of stories of people struggling with that. And I mean, that's a pretty hard.
Yeah, and what a terrible situation to be in, where it's like, you would think a God, if it existed, would help with that, right? It's like, oh no, by the way, you don't have to destroy your marriage. I'm here. It's like, oh, okay, thanks for sending me that email, God. I really appreciate it. It's like, yeah, my bad. Anyway, back to my other important things I got to do. It's just, I'm being intellectually honest, and that might destroy my marriage. Like, I'm not even cheating. I'm not even doing any of the evil commandment things that you're saying that I shouldn't do. Like, I'm just being intellectually honest, and that could be what could jeopardize this long-term arrangement that I set up with a person that I love more than anyone else in the world. What a terrible situation to find yourself
in. It's the
in.
devil testing you, Ty. It's the devil testing you
On God's command. It's just the weird thing. It's just like, God, devil, stop testing me. It's like, God wants me to do this. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
He placed bets.
Feeling like Job.
Yeah. I'm just doing what God is allowing me to do. Like, if I couldn't do it, God didn't want me to do this, I wouldn't be able to do it. It was like, okay, what a terrible situation, God. You're still the manager in this situation. Next time the devil tempts you, just say, I want to talk to your manager.
Right.
And get on the line with God and be able to help you out. Guys, I wanted to bring up that one extra point that you said, where you mentioned, Dred, that when you are watching a movie and you don't like it, you walk out of the movie. When you're reading a book, you stop reading the book and you walk out. What would it take for a Christian to read the Bible from beginning to end and put down the Bible and be like, no, this isn't the God who I thought? Because when you think about it, a lot of atheists become atheists because they read the Bible. I'm not sure if that's a similar story for people on this call, but for me, the kicking, I was already on I'm not really sure about this religion thing. And I was taking a class in ethics in college, and I was a very hardcore Christian even back then. And like, my first test was, how do you know good things or bad things? And I'm just putting down Bible quotes, and I'm very confident with what I'm doing. And I did poorly on the test. And so I said, how dare you fail me on this test? Let me just look in the Bible and pull out these quotes. And in the quotes themselves, yes, I felt justified. But the context that they were in, I was like, ooh, let me find a better quote. Let me find a better story, a better parable. And I'm like, let me just read this from beginning to end. And I'm like, oh no, there's like a lot of things, because at that point I now had a fundamental understanding of what it meant to treat people well and the consequences of my actions. And I'm realizing God's going about this all wrong. And I'm like, why am I thinking that? Like, how can I, as a human being, think maybe drowning all the people in the world isn't the best way to go about spreading a message of how good and kind you think a certain group of family is. Maybe you could just talk to them. Drowning babies is never a good reason. It should never be your A plan, God. And I thought, I read through the whole Bible. I read it again. And then I stopped after I realized, like, I can only cherry pick certain chapters, and I couldn't appreciate it at all. But what would it take for a Christian to read the Bible and do the same thing that Dred, you did when you're watching a bad movie? And how good would it be if we could all be quitters in that regard? So, Dred, on that,
it's a stigma, right? To be a quitter. And I think people are just tied up in this idea that you got to follow through on something at all costs, regardless of your happiness or your joy.
Right.
That once you made a commitment, it's like, you have to follow through it. No, you don't.
Right.
And that's what you got to learn. Right? It's just no. You can actually look out for your own self-interest.
Right.
You don't have to be an altruist about, your time or your interest or your dedication or anything like that. You get to, you're here once. You get to pick the stuff you like.
I love it.
People you want to be with, the things you want to do. And
I'm
that's
glad-
where you should be at.
I'm glad I'm spending this time with you because this is where I want to be, at least on my Sunday mornings. Bujo, what do you think about the idea of value of being a quitter?
Yeah, well, I think, well, the first thing I'll point out, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got a hug from my daughter on Father's Day on camera. So
Oh, that's
that was great.
Yeah, right on.
I do think it's important to make a distinction here because I made the joke, oh, you're a quitter, but I'm just like you, Dred. I quit smoking cigarettes too. I've smoked for 10 years. Best decision I ever made. We do have to frame it though a little bit because I think there is a whole other side of this of like, finishing high school.
right.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
sitting in freshman class going, you know what? This really just, I don't love this.
Right.
I'm gonna just, yeah. So you frame it in such a way, if we're talking about something that is truly entertainment or truly something just for your free time. Yes, absolutely. Like you're saying, know when to just say, I can be doing something better. Don't
Right.
feel like you're bought into it. But obviously when we're talking about, career minded things and trying to run a certain distance or speed or something like that, yeah, here's where you flip it and now don't be the quitter. But so those are very different, and I think it's obvious probably to everyone, but yeah.
And from this context, speaking of contextualization, I hear when someone says I quit, what I'm hearing is I have a standard for my time, and this
Yes,
falls below
there you
that
go.
standard. And like you said, Bujo, I can do better things that are more rewarding to me, as Dred says, with my time, with the things that I enjoy doing, the things that I appreciate more than spending on this. And I can say the equivalent would be like I could eat junk food all day, or I can actually have a meal, that's like nutritious, healthy. I can cook it myself, and it could be more filling for me. I'd rather do that than eat a 40th bag of Cheetos, like like at a certain day, one's flack and the other one's fire, and I'd rather have the fire. I would appreciate it if there were more quitters or people who had more standards for their empathy and how they treat people and what they allow to go into their minds that help them dictate true things from false things. If they were, and we need more quitters of that capacity, more people who have high standards of that capacity, particularly in the religious sector. And I would say also atheists can learn it too, but scientists and science, that would be my first distinction that people should start to be aware of. Has nothing to do with religion. Just be aware that there are scientists that say things, and then the science model that indicates something, because it's not an anthropomorphized being. It's a model that suggests something or works in a certain way, and we can come up with better models. And nothing's ever definitive, but it does help us progressively get to more useful understandings of the world that we live in. And that's the distinction between the two. It's not just someone talking. It's a model that anyone can appreciate and work in. And we need more people to work in that model. Dred, any last words?
It's also about being more conscious of the choices you make, right? And taking
that takes work.
Responsibility for the choices you make,
Yeah.
If you just say, well, that's the way I was raised, or I've been doing this forever,
right.
That's not making a choice. That's not even acknowledging you have one.
Right.
Right. When you take the responsibility and say, I may be where I am now, but I make a decision on where I'm going to put my foot next.
Right.
Right.
Taking accountability of your own life.
Put my head next.
Right.
Whatever.
And Boudreaux, finishing high school.
Finishing high school. A good
Finishing
thing.
high school,
Yeah. So like what we came up with was a really cool model of like, hey, you should learn how to quit more. And Boudreaux was like, actually, let's take that model and refine it. And we're like, oh, let's take that model and refine it. Let's talk more about standards. We got closer to a better explanation of how we should treat other people and how to take control of our lives. Like that's science. Imagine if that was a process that was going on for thousands and thousands of years. It has been. Let's use that process more than the one that hasn't changed and was just like, don't quit. I put it in a book and I gave it to you on a golden piece of mail. It's like, no, we can do better than that. We did better than that in like a 5-minute conversation. We can take any of those commandments, come with better versions of it, lickety split. So science is good. It's in our interest because we can improve upon it. That's the whole value of it. So it's not perfect to begin with. It won't be perfect, maybe ever, but it will get better. And we're already at a state where it's better than the dogmatic rules that we have already. So why not use them? Why not use the best tools that we have available to us? And listen to the science rather than the scientists, because we can all be scientists. And so we should all be cooperating with each other and arguing against each other using science, right? All right. Boudreaux, anything we should check out before next week?
Yeah, can I share a quick little example of how scientists can fail?
Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. So this in particular, a data scientist, which is something I'm seeing in my world of engineering, where everyone loves data and they love spreadsheets and pivot tables and they want to make graphics and all that. Someone put a graphic together for fatal crashes in the United States, about 40,000 or so fatal crashes every year, and they found that half of the fatal crashes every year, about half, they were a vehicle was traveling 91 miles an hour or faster.
Okay.
Think about that. Okay. Safest highways in the safest roads in the United States are interstates. And those are about the only places where you can even go 91 miles an hour. And we're saying half of all fatal crashes are happening 91 miles an hour faster. This bounced around a bunch of my colleagues and everyone was like, this can't be right. And within a few minutes, a guy went in, William, Summit guy, went in and just did some checking on the database. Turns out there are two codes in the database for speed, 998 and 999, which means something like none detected or unknown. So this data scientist was including all of the unknown speeds in this graph. Because they were greater than 91, they were just codes for something else.
Cool.
Know your data, understand the metadata.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
No, that's a great example. It's a great example
Yeah.
because we figured out what the problem was and we didn't use religion to solve it. Like we didn't pray in a circle and figure that out. We used science to figure out a scientific problem. And that is what makes science so good, because you can use it to fix itself. It's like designed.
It's a self-correcting mechanism.
Yes, it's exactly that. And so like when we have a problem with scientific data, we analyze it scientifically. We talk about it in a scientific nature and we fix it using more science. And we're like, oh, it's now better. And we can test that. Fantastic. Isn't science awesome? It's not a weird obelisk that just stands in the middle of a pyramid somewhere. It's a process that we can all work on together, and it's multifaceted, and it's just so cool. It's innovative, it's interesting, it's intriguing. And Dread Pirate, do you have any words that you'd like to share with us?
Well, if anyone's interested, you can check out my YouTube channel, Mind Pirate, MINDPYRAT. I've been doing weekly benedictions on there through the church. I've also been exploring some logical fallacies and cognitive biases. I just recently did a short video on confirmation bias.
Ooh.
And then previously I'd done one on ad hominem versus argument, or challenging belief. The difference between going after somebody or going after what they believe.
Right.
So I've been upping my content a little bit and spending more time on the channel, getting lots of subscribers. So I feel good about that. So yeah, check it out.
Congratulations. And any of my subscribers, feel free to subscribe to Mind Pirate. His quality content has always been great. And happy Father's Day for today. Happy Juneteenth for tomorrow. And everybody have an opportunity to celebrate, get outdoors, and appreciate this one life that we might actually have. And until then, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for coming to the Digital Freethought Radio Hour. This is 103.9 FM, low power, Knoxville. Bye, guys.
Love it. See ya.